Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Beta Yisrael, of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, brothers and sisters, we do not intend for it to be long, but we do intend, brothers and sisters, to have this brought out to the people for standard and for edification purposes. We ask you all to subscribe to the channel. We ask you all to comment, to like, and to share. Brothers and sisters, this is being posted on two different channels. Beta Yisrael Torah lessons, as well as Beta Yisrael Hebrew lessons. Whatever channel you happen to see this upon, we ask you all to subscribe to the channel in such cases. Shalom, my brother Yirmiyahu Yisrael. My shalom ka'aki. And in this, brothers and sisters, we are going to ask that if I can be heard and if people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard and if people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. For those who do know, recently, a brother, you may want to use the word incapacitated, not feeling well in a hospital. And I do thank the people on the human level who offered prayers for me when I was dealing with my fever. When I had a situation in which I was dealing with, and for the people who gave constructive criticism on how to get better and say in one's health. I'm going to, brothers and sisters, get into this particular matter concerning the Falashas in Hebrew. And again, we do not intend for this to be long, but we want to again bring this out to the people for edification purposes. I'm asking you all to get your pens, your pad, and your paper and to take notes. Briefly, just showing myself upon the camera here, so that way people can get somewhat of an understanding whether you're familiar with the channel or not, who it is whom you're subscribing to. Hopefully you subscribe, and it makes some people more comfortable to at least see something of the person who they're taking the time out to listen to. Such as my custom, to focus more on the PowerPoint in the lesson, I usually just turn the camera off in said manner. All right. So what we're going to do now is present by going to the share screen matter, right? And pulling it up. Go to what they call entire screen. Pull up the PowerPoint. Share in that particular case, if you will. And brothers and sisters, we are going to get into this particular matter and this particular subject. All right. So let us start from slideshow, from the aspect of beginning of it, giving honor to the Most High. Notes on the subject. Kohen Mikael, in his book, Israelites and Jews, a significant difference, pointed out that Strabo stated that Hebrews existed from the Catabasmos to Ethiopia. This was in the 1st century BCE and the 1st century AD. The Catabasmos is in Libya. So, brothers and sisters, I'm going to just minimize this, for the second, if you will. All right. And turn on, if you will, the camera, if you will, brothers and sisters. And I want to show my teacher's book, as you can see here, Israelites and Jews, the significant difference, by my teacher, Kohen Mikael. Brothers and sisters, you can get this book on Amazon and in other aspects. The link for such and information, say for such, is in the description when it will be uploaded. This is my second copy of it because my first one, I read it so much the cover came off. I was very impressed with, though I sat under Kohen Mikael since I was 12 years old, this book coming out when I was, say 15, 16 or so. And I was actually impressed, brothers and sisters, in the information, because a lot of the information that my teacher spoke upon was not spoken upon regularly by my said same teacher. So as you may see here, just showing this real quick, you see him talking about Persia and the empire in there and so forth. All right. Just want to point that out for reference purposes. In part of the book, as just pointed out, we're going to turn off the camera and go back and pull up the PowerPoint, if we will, right? He stated, Strabo stated that Hebrews existed from the Catabasmos to Ethiopia. So if the Catabasmos is in Libya, so we're talking from modern day Libya to Ethiopia. That must include one way, shape, form, fashion, Egypt. In the lessons called From Jerusalem to the Hood, we have discussed about Israelites being in Egypt since the days of Jeremiah and even before such. Shalom, my brother, the Rayahu. So let's continue on in this. The new name of the province, Syria Palestina, was normally, if not consistently, used after this date. It too celebrated the purging of the Jewish heritage from the land. Archaeological surveys confirm a considerable depopulation of Judea in this period. An unknown proportion of the refugees must have fled into the diaspora. Cambridge, Ancient History, Volume 11, page 675. What are we pointing out? The new name, going to the laser pointer, Syria Palestina, that was given to the land of Israel, brothers and sisters, by whom? The Romans. Was normally, if not consistently, used after this date. It too celebrated the purging of the Jewish heritage from the land. Now, we got excited as the book itself was citing from cited, though we know instead of Jewish, it would be more so Judah, Israel, Hebrew, so forth and so on. So just want to point that out. It goes on to say archaeological surveys confirm a considerable depopulation of Judea in this period. Where did these people go? Could it be, as my teacher Kohen Mikael stated, citing Strabo, that they went to places such as Libya, Egypt, and Ethiopia? Could that have been the case? Concerning the diaspora of the Israelites in that particular manner? Let's go on. The Lord's Jews, the scattering matter, according to his book, Will Durant. By 70 AD, there were thousands of Jews in Seleucia, on the Tigris, and in other Parthian cities. They were numerous in Arabia and crossed thence into Ethiopia. They abounded in Syria and Phoenicia. So hold on. Let's look at this here. Right? Looking at it from the pen. Thousands of Jews in Seleucia on the Tigris. This Seleucia is not in Greece. The Tigris River is over by Assyria of the ancient world. And in other Parthian cities. The Parthians were the people of Persia, as they were called during the Roman Empire. Now we know by 70 AD, the Roman Empire is in effect. They, meaning the Jews, if we will, were numerous in Arabia. Okay, so now when you get to the book on your own, called From Babylon to Timbuktu, by Rudolf Windsor, and he starts to talk about the Israelites in Yathrib, that's not far-fetched, and crossed thence into Ethiopia. So, brothers and sisters, the people crossed thence into Ethiopia. So now when you look at a book written, say, back in the 1970s or 80s, if I'm not mistaken, this book here, right? Last of the Ethiopian Falashas, the Lord's Jews. Let's look at this real quick. Because according to this right here, it says what? if we look at this, brothers and sisters, with the laser pointer, archaeological surveys confirm a considerable depopulation of Judea in this period. An unknown proportion of the refugees must have fled into the diaspora. Now, if we take that from Cambridge, which is a college, a university, if you will, right, to get collegiate, if you will, to cite our sources on a more quote-unquote trusted level, for the lack of a better term, right? What does it state, brothers and sisters? That an unknown proportion of them must have gone into the diaspora, thence into Ethiopia, according to Will Durant in his book called Caesar in Christ. They abounded in Syria and Phoenicia. According to Masala, which is one of the leaders of the Ethiopian Falashas, Beta Yisrael as they call themselves, the Falashas felt that all the Jews in the world were black. They felt that, quote, all the Jews in the world were black. When they were encountered by Europeans saying that they too were, quote, Jews, they were like, what, who, how, what? That was unknown to them. Brothers and sisters, in that book there, The Lost Jews, Last to the Ethiopian Falashas, it speaks about what they refer to as the Symbatian River. The Symbatian River, brothers and sisters, according to what they say, is leading people to where parts of the lost tribes of Israel are. And part of that, in that same book, that you can even get online by Louis Rappaport, who's now deceased, by the way, it will get into the matter of saying that part of the diaspora or the dispersion of the house of Israel is in America. So let's take all of this into account, if we will. If one of their leaders that was featured in the Jerusalem Chronicle newspaper named Musala stated that the Falashas in Ethiopia, and I'm only using the term Falasha for edification purposes, they're more so truly called Beta Yisrael, all right? The Ethiopian Jews, as some will say them to be. If they felt and feel that, quote, all the Jews in the world were black, and if this said Symbatian River is saying that part of the tribes of Israel is scattered in America, then who are they talking about people being scattered in America who have been called part of the house of Israel? I'm asking again, brothers and sisters. And while this is called concerning the Falashas in Hebrew, I'm going to, not trying to be funny, but ask the question in Hebrew. Im ha'amin ba'eretz kush im hemargashim haputza Yisrael ba'eretz America wehem omrim Hayhudim hamamashiyim shakorim efohem. What am I asking? If the people in Ethiopia are saying that part of the dispersion of the house of Israel is in America, and they also, according to their leaders, were saying that all, quote, the Jews in the world were black, who would they be talking about? Why do I point this out in part two? Because some Israelites in America, no disrespect in saying it, being born in New York City myself, will say, no, those are Hamites. Those are not Israelites. But for those who want to not cite external sources of the Bible, let's go, if we will, brothers and sisters, to the scriptures itself. And let's go, if we will, to the book of Isaiah for one of the citations. In Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11. And what do we read in this particular case? In Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11, it says what in part? And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt, and from Patmos, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. So when it speaks upon his people, we Israelites already know that his people is the house of Israel. Now, these people who are called Falashas do not call themselves that. They call themselves Beta Yisrael, which means in the Amharic language, the house of Israel. Bet is Hebrew for house. Beta or Beta in Aramaic is house. And Beta in Amharic is house. We have to begin in part to, quote, broaden our mind, brothers and sisters, to know and understand that when it talks about the scattering of the people, what's being spoken upon and what's being spoken about. Now, mind you, the Israelite community who are called Falashas in Ethiopia are not the only people in Ethiopia that they claim to be in Israelites, you know. There's another group referred to in part as Habesha in Ethiopia who also state they are of the Israelite people. The Falashas got notoriety when the Portuguese met up with them back in the 1670s. There's a group of people in the Congo that they claim to be of the house of Israel. There's a group of people in Southern Africa referred to as the Lingba that are referred to as the house of Israel. You understand? So these things, brothers and sisters, are not far-fetched. These things, brothers and sisters, is not something that we're just making up. But for collegiate or college kind of purposes, we want to sit there and get into this kind of matter. Citing Will Durant in his book called Caesar in Christ, he states again, by 70 AD, there were thousands of Jews in Seleucia, on the Tigris, and in other Parthian cities. Seleucia, what? The Seleucids. They are people of the Greek Empire that had dwindled by, then fallen as an empire, but still around and having their names placed on things. On the Tigris. The Tigris is adjacent, correct me if I'm wrong, to the Euphrates. That's as you go in Genesis chapter 2 by the land of Assyria, the so-called Middle East. And in other Parthian cities, they were numerous in Arabia. Get the book. I'm going to type it in, brothers and sisters. The name of this book here is called From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph Windsor. The style of that author, From and To, is where I got the concept of the book that I wrote called From Assyria to America. And yes, I give due respect to the people who paved the way for me to even get the idea, even if they didn't know they did it. Because you got some so-called teachers in Israel that will sit there and act like it was all me who taught myself, not even giving the Most High his respect. I studied this on my own. Ain't nobody taught me anything. Use a wicked something else. We're going to keep the language clean while we're going over the subject. I know people in Israel who are like that. That they will not go in, say, in their bibliography if they do write a book. That they will not, when doing a presentation, cite their sources. It doesn't make you brother or sister any less of a teacher. It does not make you any less of one who can influence while you're trying to sit there and do things. I need more views. I can't sit there and cite somebody else's channel because that's going to take views from me. Brothers and sisters, Israelites is on the T list. You know, the T word that they use for scare. They ask us not to use that before a channel can get flagged. You know, they got a list of things on the quote unquote T or scared list. Israelites is on it. So these views that you swear, I'm getting views. ATF, the NYPD, the LAPD, the FBI, and the CIA watches your channel. They probably watching this as we go over it right now. So while you up there, yay, I'm getting views. That man is also watching you. Malcolm X, doing the sad part of his ending. There were 9 FBI agents in the room of the 400 people that were there when Malcolm was assassinated. 9 people who were agents in the 1960s. So your views Don't get too happy with them, because they watch as well. Remember the idiot, the fool that confessed to his crime in the song, and then they came and locked him up? They watch you. They probably the ones who don't comment. They probably some of the same ones with a Hebrew name on the low. Who knows? But when you're rolling with the Most High, and when I say rolling, is not trying to sound street talk, but when you're doing things in the name and the spirit of the Most High, it says the righteous stand bold as a lion. So you don't even have to sit there and worry about it. Use, like they said in the Malcolm X movie, for the lack of a better term, use what the white man's giving you to your own benefit in this case, hence the internet, to get this knowledge out to our people. Some of the people I cited in my bibliography were Caucasians. We can't sit there while speaking English, say, I'm not going to use that as, say, a source, because remember, it was their intention for us to never know how to read in the first place. So while they condemn and try to make, quote, Africa look bad, and so forth and so on, do know and understand the Most High is making a way for us to get this out to our people and to hear from our brothers and sisters and elders as well. So just want to state that there. If I can be heard and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Elephantine matter. Malek, in his book Atlas of Ancient Egypt, speaks of the Jews at Elephantine Island, and the Bible does as well. The Israelites migrated to African places in history, however, since the era of Solomon. Solomon, king of Israel. According to some, and this is something I'm still working upon in my studies, according to some, however, 2 things I ran across concerning Solomon. The Queen of Sheba, according to some, was the sister of Hapsetset of Dynasty 18. That is something that archaeologists and historians are saying is a, quote, strong possibility. In a book called Phoenicians, it speaks about the travels that Solomon led that went all the way to Britain of today. Another thing in thought by archaeologists and so forth is that the gold of Ophir that Solomon had is located in modern day Zimbabwe, which is in Africa. Let's say that's the case. Of all the women that Solomon is known to have had, when you go into the Book of Kings, were Shemitic and Hamitic. Sidebar. I do not teach with reason that, quote, the white man is Esau or Edom. For those who know the history that a brother presents, I teach according to history and prophecy that Edom mixed in with Kittim. That doesn't mean that you become a new nation. Kittim is part of the people of Japhet. I cite the book of Joshua for such. Edom mixed in with the Romans. Edom mixed in with the people of Japhetic nations. But you are still what your father is, regardless of what nation you belong to. So, brothers and sisters, no. The Edomite wives of Solomon were not the women you see on 90210. No disrespect intended. And sidebar. In time, we're going to go over the prophecy that we see, brothers and sisters, in Obadiah and in other portions concerning Esau, and tie it up and show how a history connects in such cases. Now, getting back into this particular matter right here. Malek, in his book Atlas of Ancient Egypt, speaks of the Jews of Elephantine Island, and the Bible does as well. Elephantine Island is in southern Egypt, going toward the Sudan. So now when we read about Patros, or an Egyptian Piteret, in the Bible, in Isaiah, it's not far-fetched than what we're talking about. Israelites migrating to places of their own volition, in many cases, was within the, quote, African continent. When you read in Jeremiah chapter 44, as pointed out on this channel, it talks about the people in Takapankes, which in Egyptian, Tapanes or Tapakenes means the land of the black ones. Because Ta in Egyptian means black, and Pankes, pardon me, Ta means land in Egyptian, and Pankes means black. According to the book, brothers and sisters, Understanding the Old Testament by Bernhard Anderson, volume 3, he stated that Egypt became one of the main places for, quote, the Jews to go to in the diaspora. The diaspora happening heavily during the time between the fall of the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom. By the time we get into the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, when the Persians were ruling, the majority of the Israelite people were outside of the land more so than inside of the land. When Babylon fell to the Medes and the Persians in the 6th century BCE, not all of the Israelites migrated back. Some stayed in Babylon. What you're seeing on the left-hand side, brothers and sisters, right? Jewish, Aramaic, Persian era, Elephantine marriage contract. So let's not think that there were no marriage contracts, but only divorce contracts. All right? Aramaic became what is referred to as the lingua franca during the time of the Persian Empire. That's why you see parts of Ezra and Nehemiah written in Aramaic formation. It's the cousin to the Hebrew language, brothers and sisters. So, not something and totally being far-fetched. Afro-Asiatic languages. This is a chart showing the list of languages which are Afro-Asiatic languages. Hebrew is listed as cousin to Aramaic. Hebrew and Aramaic are cousins in lingual matters. I'm going to, brothers and sisters, circle the parts we're talking about. Hebrew and Aramaic. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm going to circle in a different color. Let's pick black. Where Amharic, related to Geese, brothers and sisters, is shown in that particular case. Sidebar, we want to check this off here, Akkadian. Right? Akkadian language, during the time when Egypt was going through their 18th dynasty, was part of the lingua franca. That is why you find the Amarna records written in Akkadian. Did you know that the Amarna records speak of Dadua in Yeshua? Do you know who Dadua and Yeshua is? And the Amarna records written in Akkadian in the Bible is called David and Jesse. So David, king of Israel, when you study the Amarna records, is mentioned in such. So brothers and sisters, these are things we want to point out for reference purposes. And I give thanks to the Most High and feeling better to be able to even come forth with this kind of information. Why does this become important? What you see right here, I'm going to erase, brothers and sisters, right? Erase all ink on slide. And currently just circle that one right there, Amharic. Why in part does that become important? Because Amharic is the language that the so-called Falashas speak, which is related, brothers and sisters, in the language chart to, we're going to circle it, Hebrew. So here we see brothers and sisters showing with different color, if we will, right? Let's highlight that by highlight it, saying this underneath it, highlighting it underneath it, Aramaic. Now let's go back to what we just did, brothers and sisters, right? Aramaic, Persian era. See that right there? And we see, brothers and sisters, that Aramaic and Hebrew are related. Also, Hebrew being related to Geese and Amharic. Amharic, again, being the language that the so-called Falashas speak. See how all of this intertwines. Hebrew is not an Indo-European language. It's listed next to the cousin language being Aramaic. Brothers and sisters, in the book that I wrote called, and I'm going to type it in here, From Assyria to America 2. You can get that book online. I detailed this, but in much more details than what I'm doing in the video here, for those who are interested. All right, now let's go on. The letter Hey and Tau. This is the letter Hey shown with the red underneath it. I'm going to leave the letter Tau with nothing underneath it so people can make the distinction. The letter Hey makes the H sound. The letter Tau makes the T, and some say and or the TH sound. That's why you find some brothers and sisters saying Baluka Tha. You understand? But brothers and sisters, what do we want to point out? Both of these letters here are feminine letters. Both of these letters here are feminine letters. In Hebrew, you have to have the letter Hey shown there with the red underneath it, just to show what letter is what, in order to get something to exist or to happen. There's causative in the he feels stem. So sisters, women, mothers, daughters, female cousins, and everyone else. Hebrew is not misogynistic. I'm going to take the liberty, brothers and sisters, and to type this into the comments, if we will. Thank you for such. All right. Hebrew is not misogynistic. What does that mean? Hebrew is not in the spirit, in the form of hating women. Brothers and sisters, it is not, brothers and sisters, man over woman in Hebraic thought. It is honor your father and your mother, because parents become a mother and father at the exact same time. Once the gamete of the male fertilizes the gamete of the female, both are needed. And in this wicked society, they're finding out more and more, because in Hebrew, there is no Hebrew way to say trans G word. We can't even, they ask us not to even say certain things to not get your channel flag. There is no Hebrew word, and I don't know Amharic or Geese, but I'll go so far as to say there probably is no Amharic or Geese word for trans G that this society tried to promote in certain cases. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, in getting into this particular matter and getting into this particular subject, we want to point out again that Hebrew is not misogynistic. It is not, brothers and sisters, about the downing of the man, which is misandry, nor is it about the downing of the female, which is misogyny, brothers and sisters. All right? So, brothers and sisters, let us pull up again the PowerPoint and start from current slide and seeing what we're seeing here. The letter Hey, we're going to show again with the highlighter, but I'm going to make this highlighter in red. Now I'll make the highlighter in black. Right? That's the letter Hey. I'm leaving the letter Tau with nothing underneath it, so the distinction can be there. Both are feminine letters of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Hebrew is read from right to left. The letters also hold numerical values. This is discussed in the book we will show later. The letters which are silent remain silent, unlike English. The understanding, too, that Hebrew is the language of gender is actually true. That's why there's no Hebrew word for trans G or something of that nature. There's Ragil, which is normal, and anything else is called to Aba, an abomination. All right, so the letters also hold numerical value, brothers and sisters, in this particular case. Hebrew is read from right to left. Rules and regulations. In Hebrew, a noun is known as either feminine or masculine. The possession of the noun is noted at the end of the noun. Are there any questions about what we're talking about? Please type it into the chat. If there are any questions concerning what we are talking about, please type it into the chat. The word that we see right here is the word koma, brothers and sisters. And I'm going to take the liberty, if we will, to type it in. Koma. The word you see here, brothers and sisters, is komati. So let's expound upon what we just did, if we will. Koma means wall, like the wall in your house. Komati, my wall. This is a feminine noun. Why? Because of this letter here. The letter hey at the end of such. The letter hey at the end of a word doesn't make it feminine. The letter hey at the end of a noun in particular makes it feminine. So to show the possession, mine, yours, his, hers, theirs. The hey, brothers and sisters, all right, we're going to show with the pen drops off, and in place of it comes the towel. So Homa, wall, becomes Komati, my wall. The hay becomes, brothers and sisters, a towel. In that particular case, that's how Hebrew works with feminine nouns. So let's remember this as we go along for edification purposes. Again, if there's any questions concerning what we're talking about, please type it into the chat. Thank you, brothers and sisters. The matter of verbs, past and future. Regarding verbs, the past tense is noted as showing the suffix at the end of the word. Example, shama means to hear. Shamati means I heard. Regarding verbs, the future tense is noted as showing a prefix at the beginning of the word. Example, shama means to hear. Tishma means you will hear. Let's expound upon what we're talking about. Shamata watishma. Here we see the word shamata, right? Shin mem ayin tau. The word means you heard. Now that's when you're speaking to a male. This is noted in the past tense. If we go back, brothers and sisters, this is why we ask you to get your pens, your pads, and your paper and to take notes, right? Now, regarding verbs, which is an action word, right? The past tense is noted as showing the suffix at the end of the word. Past tense of verb in Hebrew is known by showing in its suffix. The suffix here, brothers and sisters, is, I'm going to color code it differently, sorry. Right, shown with the pen here, but we're going to use a different color right here, what you see there. Showing it from the top and the bottom. That ta shows it in the past tense. The word shin mem ayin, shama, which actually is an Aramaic word, but that's a whole other subject, means to hear. All right? So, in the past tense. Here we see tishma, meaning you will hear. So let's color code this a little different. Color code this one here in the red. Remembering this rule that we went over before, right? And that is what? Hebrew is read from right to left. That we must bear in mind as we go through this, brothers and sisters. So, looking upon said manner, right? Here we see tishma. The future tense in Hebrew is shown in its prefix. The past tense in Hebrew is shown in its suffix. Are there any questions concerning that? Let me know. A chief and one who resembles him. Now, for those who do know, the man that you see there in front of the congregation that was Benny Adat out in Brooklyn, New York, that man there, may he rest in peace, is Chief of Chief Naphtali Ben Naphtali, a Hebrew teacher, by the way, a history teacher, by the way, an advisor, by the way, and a person, not being too personal, whom I one time saw on a train and went with him to his job as far as I was allowed to go, while him and I talked and build. Much respect to him. May he rest in peace. And in leaving a good name on this earth. Now, what you're seeing, the elder, may he rest in peace, in a red turban on the left-hand side, is Chief of Chief Naphtali. Now, whom you're seeing on the right-hand side, I don't know that elder's name in a white head wrap, but he's from the community that's called the Falashas, Beta Yisrael. Please tell me what is the difference between Chief of Chief Naphtali and the man that you see there shaking Benjamin Netanyahu's hand. I'm going to leave y'all to that. And I say that in no disrespect. I'm going to sit here and pause for a moment myself, because when I sat there and was putting this PowerPoint together, I'm like, hold on. As this European Jewish guy, Khazar, whoever he might be, right, is greeting the leaders of the so-called Falashas, the Beta Yisrael, from the side, that man looked virtually no different than the person who my mother had to call upon to get advice from, my mother and he both now being deceased. This is over 20 years ago, because my mother been gone for now over 19 years. Do you see why we talk about leaving a legacy and so forth and so on? What is the difference, at least in appearance, between those two men? Anybody? I don't mean to raise my voice. Just a question. You want to talk about history? He's the elder on the left-hand side with the red head wrap that put me onto what Cambyses was. For those who've been following the channel, I speak about Cambyses just the other night, Friday night, Shabbat, when I was going over the matter with the temple in history. That's the Prime Minister of Israel. Yeah, the Prime Minister of Israel. That's the white dude that we see there, just shaking hands with the guy with the glasses. The question I'm asking my brother is, what is the difference between the guy with the white turban on the right-hand side in the land of Israel and the elder that we see with on the red on the right-hand side in Brooklyn, New York? So when you start talking about, wow, there's somebody on this earth that looks just like you, I know that's not Chief of Chief Naphtali on the right-hand side with the white head wrap. But to me, I can't see no resemblance of, pardon me, I see there is no difference, at least from the side. Both got on glasses, both in garments, both got on the turban, both got a similar beard, both for elders. See? Wasn't that far-fetched what we was talking about, was it? Brothers and sisters, the Hebrew is Easy book. This book written by Beta Yisrael, dedicated to those who care to have an understanding Hebrew from the alphabet to the understanding how to read. In this book, one too will get a list of videos in a playlist that one can follow along to assist in one's understanding of the Hebrew language. This book in spirit is to show how easy Hebrew is. It is now a 6-volume, soon to be 8, Creator willing set, which can all be acquired online. If one cares to reach out to me, one can do so by calling 908-587-4841. All right. I'm going to do something that's not common of me to do, brothers and sisters, and that is to turn the camera back on, if we will. Right? This book right here, brothers and sisters, this was written by Iman Shoshana. So you want to learn Hebrew. In the description, because you cannot get this book on Amazon, I'm going to show the link on how to get this particular book in the info on such. This book right here is better than any of the Hebrew books that I wrote. And I say that not to sound any way negative with self. This book here, I prefer you get this book over my book as far as the Hebrew goes in that particular case. It is more thorough than the books that I wrote in the Hebrew in that particular case. All right. So again, just wanting to point this out for edification purposes. Sorry, family, I must take this call. All right. I'm going to mute for a reason purpose. Sorry about that, brothers and sisters. Normally I wouldn't take the call, but that one was of urgency. So sorry about that. I'm not even going to call it an interruption. I'm going to call it of necessity and communication. If I can be heard and people in good spirits as we close out, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard and people in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Thank you for that much, brothers and sisters. All right. So what we were doing, brothers and sisters, right, is showing the book that Iman Shoshana wrote in this particular case. All right. Thank you, family, for such. We were showing this book for Hebrew edification purposes, right? And we, of course, we're going to show Kohen Mikael's book. You know, again, this is the second copy of it I got because when I got it as a teenager, I read that book so much that the cover done came off. But Kohen Mikael told me something, being my Hebrew teacher, a history teacher, and advisor, and sidebar, no disrespect intended, something that has nothing to do with the Shabbat. When I had beef with people in school, I remember calling Mikael. My father, by then, may he rest in peace, was deceased. And I remember calling Mikael, like, what do you think I should do with these guys who want to fight me in the school? His advice was, young blood, and I'm saying he didn't say young blood, I'm just saying that. Most of these guys are just talk and not about that kind of life. Sure enough, I go to school the next day, and the same guy's like, yo, when we see you, we're going to, certain words I can't translate, I'm not going to say right here, just stood in the hallway, just looking at me as I walked right by in high school. I say that to say that everybody ain't quote about that life as they may try to portray, be a tough guy or not. Sidebar, but see, that's what I mean when you can talk about people, no disrespect intended, outside of the realm of sacrifices and offerings and holy days, things that appeal to other things in life, like David having to get his wife back after she got kidnapped, Abraham having to get Lot back after he got kidnapped. The Torah talks about death penalty to those who do kidnappings. There are some sick people in this earth. Torah talks about that. You understand? Shalom, my love. Sarah Mikhail of the house of Yisrael. And so, looking upon it, in this particular case, brothers and sisters, I remember asking Kohen Mikael, the author of this book here, you may want to get this book, what should I do about this situation with these knuckleheads in the high school I was going to? The next day when I got there, like he said, a lot of those guys is punks. They're not about that life that they try to talk being tough. And those guys weren't. You know, just putting it like that and giving honor to the Most High that there was no drama. Brothers and sisters, we showed this book right here, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 1. You can get that online. Hebrew is Easy, Volume 2. You can get that online. Hebrew is Easy, Volume 3. You can get that online. Hebrew is Easy, Volume 4. You can get that online. Now, let's stop right here for a moment. And let's quickly, brothers and sisters, pull up again the PowerPoint. Right? And in pulling up again the PowerPoint, we want to slideshow from current slide. See that comma, meaning wall, and komati, the nouns in possession, that is expounded upon, brothers and sisters, in this book here. The nouns in possession. That's why the explanation of the nouns in Hebrew is Easy, Volume 4. All right? The verbs that we went over. Let's pull up again the PowerPoint, brothers and sisters. And we're going to go from current slide, right? We have Shamata and Tishma. Brothers and sisters, that is spoken upon in this book here in the verbs, present tense, past tense, and future tense. In the PowerPoint here, I didn't go over the present tense, but this book does, brothers and sisters. So we want to point this out again for edification purposes. All right? Hopefully everybody is well and will be better, brothers and sisters. All right? And you'll be surprised what you find when you cleaning up. You know, as the saying goes, oh, we straightening up and cleaning up, like, wow, I found what I thought I wouldn't find or thought was lost. And when you're doing research for a book, you'll be surprised how much information you run across that supports what you're talking about. Archaeologists writing books stated that they had to not curtail their thought, but add more information because more information came out as they were doing their studies. Seeking, you shall find kind of matter. All right? So just want to point that out. We have here also, brothers and sisters, Hebrew is Easy, Volume 5, Communication with Family, if we will. You can get this book online. And I want to, again, take out the time, of course, on a human level, shout out to the sister who inspires me to even write these things, Sarah Michaela, the lady and the love of my life. And for those who are able to see such, right? And going to go over and show this for reference purposes. See, this book here gets into that chart we talked about, but for those who are interested in much more deeper format, like explaining what this kind of matter is in the scroll and the 10 Commandments written in Hebrew in this translation. But I want to, brothers and sisters, going to press the escape thing on this one and give honor to the elders. To my knowledge, everyone in this picture is deceased. I'm going to show it. They say they always put it right in front of your face to show exactly what picture you want to talk about. Everyone in this picture, to my knowledge, is deceased. Correct me if I'm wrong. These elders right here in that particular case. These elders here are now deceased. Maury Mishael, I don't think nobody on this earth in the Western Hemisphere can top what he was about in Hebrew. This is not man praising. This is not ancestor worship. This is giving respect where respect is due. You don't think the Tanakh does it? When it says, as a warrior, Samson killed more in his death than he did in his life? So if I pick up that's what it says in the book of Judges, that Samson killed more in his death of the enemies of Israel than he did in his life. So if I bring up my teachers, I don't bite no tongue in cheek in doing it. There is, correct me if I'm wrong, no teacher on this earth in the Western Hemisphere, because them Israelites in Damona get down with the Hebrew, don't sleep. As far as teaching, saying a language like that, I haven't seen. Before Maury Mishael passed, we was at a Unity Day event that was being sponsored by the congregation DCB. Da'at Kakma and Bina. Shout out to the elder Chief El Kwana, who I take as an advisor and getting wisdom on how to deal in a relationship. See, you respect those who put the path for you. I mentioned Chief El Kwana before. He was a friend of my mother. May my mother rest in peace. And he said, as a man in dealing with a lady in Isha, give for your ozen, your ear, your sablanut, your patience, and your lab, which is your heart or your mind. Those three things Chief El Kwana told me to give as a man to one's woman, to his own woman. I'll never forget that kind of matter and that advice in that particular case. You understand? And brothers and sisters, getting back to the point when I remember one of the last times I spoke with Maury Mishael before he passed away was in 2018. And I said to him in his ear in Hebrew, Ata Mori, Ani Mehalel Oka, Kasho Ani Ose Kitot. And he smiled. What did I say? You are my teacher, Ata Mori, Wa Ani Mehalel Oka. And I praise you, Kasho Ani Ose Kitot, when I do classes. You ain't going nowhere. You saw that movie Sankofa? Remember when that guy in that movie Sankofa, Joe, killed Nunu, his mother? And the lady said to him, you ain't got no future. You ain't going nowhere. You can't disrespect those who help pave the path for you and think you're going to get somewhere in this. I'm going to go so far as say even in street code, you can't do that because the rapper 50 Cent got his name from somebody that was a rotziach in Hebrew called a murderer. And I'm not condoning violence. Do not get me wrong. 50 Cent, the rapper, got his name from a person who was put to death on the Shabbat, whole other subject, back in 1987 for all of the wickedness that he was into. People who knew the, quote, original 50 Cent was like, hold on, where you got that name from? And he eventually had to say, yes, I did take the name from the person who was, quote, a gangster out of Brooklyn. Now, while not condoning violence, I'm going to that far extreme to state, brothers and sisters, give respect where respect is due. It does not take anything from you for such. Any teacher who's out there teaching and not giving respect to where he or she got it from, you are wicked such and such. which words I will not translate Shabbat or otherwise in English on the channel. Brothers and sisters, Daniel cited Jeremiah. Jeremiah cited Micaiah. Micaiah the prophet was before Isaiah. There's over 50 years between Isaiah and Jeremiah. Jeremiah is citing Micaiah the prophet. Jeremiah is cited by Daniel the prophet. That does not take anything away from any of those great men being prophets. So if you are Moray and you up there teaching and you ain't letting the people know where you get your info from, who influenced you, who motivated you, you wicked. Resha. That's the word for that. And there are those in Israel who are like that. Brothers and sisters, Shalom, brother Yared. I knew that brother Yared, not getting too personal, for quite some time. He remembers my mother. And like I'm always saying, my mother passed away back when I was 24, over 19 years ago. It was so often he talks to me like, yeah, the spiritual in my head. See, that's what happens when you leave a good name. When you leave a bad name, it's not good. Think about it. Just take Black history, for instance, for this one moment, right? Not getting sidetracked from the lesson. Robert Moore's good memory. Frederick Douglass, good memory. Nat Turner, good memory. Granville T. Woods, good memory. Harriet Tubman, good memory. Sojourner Truth, good memory. Mary McLeod Bethune, that held the slave down when they were trying to run away. I don't know their name because the name of the wick is Sharat. Brothers and sisters, let's go somewhere I normally don't go. And talk about white people, for instance. Julius Caesar, not good. That's why people praise Brutus for what he did. Caligula, not good. That's why people don't blame the Senate when they stabbed him up. The people who ran after the guys who killed Alexander, in their culture, they are good people, understandably so. So, brothers and sisters, every group of people, every nationality, every race, if you want to use that term, nationality, has good and bad people within them. Even, not being funny, the so-called Falashas. We read over earlier about that guy Musala, right? And what he said as a leader. Do you know when they did what they call Operation Solomon back in the 1990s? Those who do know about that, when they was airlifting them with George Bush Sr. as part of that operation, what they call Operation Solomon. Do you know that there was one of the leaders among the Falashas that was signing off to make sure that all of them don't fly because they had an argument before the flight came? That person does not leave a good memory. The Hamites that was up there using Glock 9s and all kinds of 38s, shooting at the airplanes as they were taking off, they did not leave a good name. The original 50 Cent did not leave a good name. So we want to, brothers and sisters, while we talk upon these kind of stuff, leave a good name. And it's not to toot my own family. But this is why when people found out that my mother passed away, it was like, oh my gosh, she was such. But when you don't leave a good name and be like, such and such passed, we're like, you see, that's the difference. So, brothers and sisters, not to get sidetracked, want to get back to the point of this and showing the references. We're going to go over this again, all right? Kohen Mikael, his book here, Israelites and Jews, The Significant Difference. Get that book, brothers and sisters. Like, again, that's my second copy because the first one I read so much the cover them fell off. So you want to learn Hebrew, written by Iman Shoshana. This description on how to get this, because you cannot get this online, will be shown inside of the description. The Hebrew books here that me and my lady wrote. Hebrew for Couples, Volume 1. Hebrew for Couples, Volume 2, which I think is the best cover. This is done by the works of the people Bayis Mazan. You can look them up on Facebook. Bayis Mazan. They do the cover book. They do the covers for me in this case. And Hebrew for Couples, Volume 3. Yes, brothers and sisters, how to communicate one with another in that particular case. And we've gone over the other books, but last but not least, in showing the book that my lady wrote, the book of poetry, which, having read this myself, some of it is funny, some of it is sad, and none of it is fake. Chronicles of a Black woman's soul in and out of time. We spoke of him earlier. He said, they have healed the hurt of the daughter of my people lightly by saying peace, peace where there is no peace. So when you find sisters speaking upon how their heart is heavy, or this is going on, or that is going on, and not to get too personal, I got a lady in my life and I got 3 blood sisters. I had a mother. And this is something I'm going to take the liberty of being her son to get into. Remember earlier when I spoke upon, and I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint, brothers and sisters, right, and showing this picture right here. And it goes as such from current slide. Remember when I said that my mother called the man that you see there on the left-hand side in the red, and it had nothing to do with the Shabbat? It didn't. It had something to do with a family member. And the way my mother was crying, literally on the phone, when speaking with Chief of Chiefs, humbled me. We talk in real life when we talk in Israel. Things that happen and how to deal with advisors, counselors. What did Jacob say of Naphtali, the name that my elder on the left-hand side took? Naphtali gives good words. Milim Safer, beautiful words in Genesis 49. When my Ima, who's now resting in peace, had a situation and having no husband, and it's a situation that I, as a son, could not console my mother upon, which I'm not going to get too far into the situation of what it was. But seeing her going from crying on the phone, speaking with Chief of Chiefs, to being able to just smile about it and say, thank the Most High for your wisdom. That's the memory you want to leave. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, creator, maker of heaven and earth. Thank you to everybody in the chat, my lady Sarah Michaela, the brother Yared Judah, the brother Yirmiyahu, the brother Dorayahu Ben Dora, and anybody else who participated and will support. Most I bless you. Shalom.